Welcome, everyone, to week 9. Jim and I, of course, will start off the videos this week talking quarterbacks. We were just talking offline, and it is a strange week for quarterbacks. So we will get into that soon. But first, let me, I'm technologically indisposed. Here we go. Try and get this image up for you. We, of course, at rotocurve.com have this ongoing free trial for you, which is pretty awesome. I thought it was for a limited time, but they've kept it kind of going. It is rotocurve.com/free trial. What you get included with that, the exclusive position rankings, projections, and cheat sheets, the optimized lineups for DraftKings and FanDuel, the must-have tools. There is a lot included. Again, check out this graphic. NFL Week 9 free trial. But Jim, let me get back to week 9 now that we've talked about the free trial. Are there any free bucks to be made this week at quarterback?
That's the thing, it's a strange week, like we said. It's just a big week, a big bye week, So you have a number of notable names out. It kind of thins out that middle pack. Even the elite pack looks a little bit lighter. You'd mentioned, your strategy is usually paying down in cash, and it's actually helped me this season because I've always tried to have that be kind of my goal. It isn't always what I do, but it's kind of an intention. So it at least helps because then, there's more cost certainty to be had when you pay up at skill positions. So it's a helpful kind of technique. I think it's something that people should apply in cash games. That said, you mentioned before that, T.Y. Hilton is a little bit murky here for this game. I mean, the Packers are still dealing with all these injuries in the defensive backfield. So we'll call it the secondary to be normal. I like Luck at his price. He's a discount from Aaron Rodgers. He's a discount from Cam. The idea that Green Bay has a good pass rush is somewhat true. They're 8th highest in pressure rate, but we've also seen Luck operate under pressure his whole career. But if Hilton is out, so if this is as serious as it is starting to sound like with the hamstring, I mean, he played last week, so I wonder how much of this is gamesmanship. He came back in the game with the same injury, but he was obviously very ineffective. But I think Hilton's vertical game has a lot to do with Luck's success and vice versa. So I'd actually rather pay down. I have some weird names that I'm going to use in cash that I actually don't mind. I don't mind Josh McCown for Cleveland. It sounds crazy, but listen, he's going to pass the ball 40 times. Dallas doesn't have a pass rush at all. They're only pressuring opposing pockets, 21% of opposing dropbacks, which is the lowest rate in the NFL. And they don't try to do it artificially, so they don't blitz. So there's really no way for them to create pressure. What they do is they try to contain you on defense as best they can and play keep away with that ball-dominant, heavy rush offense. So basically, I think what you could have here is Dallas is second in the league in points per drive, so they're an awesome offense. It's kind of the story of Cleveland Browns season, right? They get down big, and then McCown still puts up 280 and 2. In his 2 games this year, he's averaging like 20 fantasy points a game. I think it's like 17 points and then 25 last week. It's just a good situation for McCown. And Corey Coleman's back. It's actually sneakily not that bad of a set of skill players for him. So I don't know what you think. It's either, I considered Kaepernick, but I'm going to push him in the tournament field when we discuss it because I'm not going to bank on Kaepernick's low floor. But, I think McCown is actually a guy who's fairly safe. It sounds crazy to say it, but I think that's how Cleveland's going to get their work done.
Yeah, it's one of those weeks where at quarterback, I think you kind of have to plug your nose because there's so much to spend up for everywhere else. We'll get to running backs, but I think it's a great week for running backs. I think there are some receivers. So quarterback, you kind of just got to find the cheap guy that's going to get you, your 15 to 20 fantasy points on DraftKings. I think on FanDuel with the way their pricing is pretty easy. You could spend up on a guy like Newton or Roethlisberger. I think those are both viable there. But, DraftKings is definitely plug your nose week. And I think Joe Flacco kind of stands out to me as terrible as that sounds. I mean, if you're looking for a guy who's hopefully got a high floor, it's a guy who's leading the league in pass attempts per game. Baltimore sitting there at 44.4, which actually edges out Drew Brees at 44.1. Now, obviously, we'd rather roster Brees than Flacco if we had the option, but I think Flacco's somewhere in the, 5,500 on DraftKings. You mentioned Kaepernick against the Saints. I mean, that Saints defense is just bad. Pretty much anyone of any skill level can move the ball against them. They don't create turnovers particularly really well. They're just bad. So I think Colin Kaepernick, especially if he could use his legs, I think you'll get something out of him. I mean, the other options are not pretty either. Someone like Sam Bradford just playing the matchup against
No.
I know. But he's minimum price on DraftKings. So, hopefully this change at the offensive coordinator can spark something. I mean, it seemed like he had it going again last week with Stephon Diggs. Maybe they'll be smart and go to Ronnie Hillman for the moment to try and create some momentum. I mean, Matt Asiata just doesn't have a whole lot other than at the goal line, and Kyle Rudolph draws a pretty incredible matchup against the Lions. So again, I think them. If I didn't feel so terrible about the way Trevor Siemian was playing recently, which is sounds funny that I'm going to trust Bradford and not him, but I am for cash that we could rely on him. But again, it's a plug your nose kind of week at the quarterback position for cash games because you want the high floor elsewhere, and you just need 250 yards and 1 touchdown from one of these guys, and you'll feel okay. So let's go to tournaments now because I'm sick of talking about these bums. Let's go to the guys who are actually going to produce this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay paying the Cam price. He's not extremely expensive. There's a reason that there's been a reduction. It's because he hasn't been super Cam this year. At the same time, the Rams are middling in defense. I mean, that's their reputation as a defensive team. But I mean, they've been look, this is a team who gave up 400 yards to Jameis Winston not that long ago. It's not really that imposing of a defense, even if Tremaine Johnson's back. And also, it's all about the legs with Cam. I think there's some potential here for him to get to the second level.
I just want to comment on that for one second because I did do a bunch of research on that this week. Here are the teams that the Rams have played to this point: the 49ers, Seahawks, Buccaneers, Cardinals in a game that Carson Palmer was hurt, Bills, Lions, and Giants. So you look at their numbers and they're definitely misleading. I don't think you can look at flat these Rams numbers, say they're kind of an imposing defense because they kind of haven't played anyone.
Yeah, I agree. And they don't even really get to the quarterback. I mean, with Aaron Donald and Quinn, they're only, I think, 17th in pressure rate, which is the number of hits, hurries, and sacks per dropback. It's a thing. It's a kind of like an equation that I use. It's a simple way to say how often are they getting to the pocket, because that's the biggest influence on quarterback success is how much time and how much space do they have to operate. Other than him, I actually don't mind Trevor Siemian. You mentioned him, but talk about time to operate. Oakland's pass rush isn't very imposing. Here's the strange thing that's happening. We're seeing less efficiency with Siemian, but he's actually pushing the ball downfield more. Last week, he completed something like 6 of 13 passes past 10 yards. He completed 3 passes of at least 30 yards. There's a little bit more verticality happening in that offense. And so in fantasy, I don't mind that exchange at all. And I think what they're starting to do is let him push it down the field a little bit more to kind of be a chunk yardage team. I think it makes sense, especially with, Sanders and Thomas still actually being in their prime. It would be a shame to constantly pepper them with these 8-yard targets. So it's just interesting. The Raiders obviously only really win in shootouts. They win them a lot, but they're kind of a shootout type team. And it's a fun kind of fantasy setup. It's also a situation where I don't think anybody's going to be on Siemian. So if you're in a tournament, it's just a differentiation move. Other than that, yeah, I mean, I'm also okay spending up for Rodgers in a tournament. I just think, one thing is they're not protecting him, but he's being awesome on the move. We know how great he is flushed out of the pocket. I think he has 7 touchdowns outside the pocket. It's second in the NFL. His QBR actually goes up outside of the pocket, which is really rare. You don't see that happen. And I guess what I'm saying about that is that he's been getting pressured a ton. He's also passing a ton. And the people talk about the yards per attempt are down, but he's making nobodies looking, make plays out here. And, Cobb should be back. Montgomery could be back. It's a pretty good arsenal. And also, isn't that the game we should hit on in tournaments? It's a 54-point, point total.
Yeah, I think Rodgers is probably going to be very heavily owned in tournaments for good reason. I think the way I'll probably be going, I mean, I think you have to have a few shares with them implied at the highest total, but I think you pick and choose which weapons you think are going to get it for tournaments just because everyone's going to be going in that direction. Someone I kind of like, and I saw that Pfeiffer did too in his ranks this week, is Drew Brees, who a lot of people just, at home, they start him.
Yeah, right. It's the road fade.
Exactly, but he proved earlier this year against Kansas City that, that's kind of a myth. I do believe in him somewhat, but not enough to the point where you look at San Francisco, which ranks 20th in pass defense according to DVOA. They struggle against number one receivers, and Pfeiffer made the comment they've got three number ones. I just think it's a very good offense, and we don't really know what's going on at running back. We do know that they'll probably be effective, whether it's Hightower, whether it's Ingram, whatever they decide to do. But Breeze is still the guy here, and I think that on weeks that he's on the road, he comes way too low ownership because everyone just thinks it's game over for him. You kind of mentioned Andrew Luck. I'm kind of monitoring that T.Y. Hilton situation. I think that to me kind of is a game changer. I know Moncrief is one of his favorite targets now that he's back. We see that Dwayne Allen's practicing; he might be back, but it's kind of a whole different ball game when Hilton's there to be the deep threat. Philip Dorsett hasn't really showed us anything, so Luck is on the other side of that matchup, probably going to be playing from behind, if we think that Rodgers at home is going to get it. So you got to like that. And some of the other guys, we already mentioned Simeon. I definitely feel more comfortable with him in tournaments. Phillip Rivers is a guy that I kind of like this week against Tennessee. Difficult team to run on. I just wrote players to avoid this week. Melvin Gordon was on that list. I think he's still at only 3.6 yards per carry, and Tennessee very difficult, very tough on opposing backs. So if this team is going to score, they're going to have to go to the air. It looks like Travis Benjamin is pretty questionable. He's got something wrong with his PCL, so we might see a lot of Dontrell Inman and Tyrell Williams, which doesn't sound too appetizing, which is why I think he might be a little under-owned in tournaments. Maybe it's a Hunter Henry week, with everyone looking at Inman, maybe he reemerges. But there's not a whole lot. I mean, the guys that I'm using in cash are probably the guys I'm using in tournaments, and we'll get to the stacks. Yeah, and I'm just pairing them. I mean, besides that, you kind of hit on Cam Newton, who's my favorite play because of who the Rams have played. I wrote them up as my favorite stack this week, but other than that, I think we've pretty much covered it. Do you have anything else to say at the quarterback position for this week?
No, it's a good point on Breeze. And I actually had him written down, but I guess maybe my own recency bias about the away thing maybe fade him. But no, yeah, I mean, I think one thing too is in like a data sample, I took out that Rams game, that week one against, that disgusting Monday night game where the 49ers essentially shut them out. If you take that away, the 49ers have been the second worst team in defending fantasy quarterbacks since then. So it's kind of just a sweet matchup all around. So I agree with you. That could be a sneaky, fun fantasy game, I think, that people might be avoiding.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we'll get to the running backs because both situations I think are going to be interesting. Yep. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's just end it on this note. Don't forget to use the free trial, rotocurve.com/free-trial. Again, you get the optimized DFS lineups and everything that's included with that package, like position rankings, projections, tools like DVP rankings, points per attempt, all that kind of fun stuff. rotocurve.com/free trial. Stay tuned as Jim and I will get to the running backs this week.